it's Nancy McMurtrey and me. So we are just going to sit down and have discussions and let it flow wherever it's going to flow for the day. So
we talked about like having some topic, to discuss, and we're like, nah, like that's you and me. We just chat, and we just, and then we always talk about really cool things, and we're like, we should have recorded this. So today.
Yeah, and watch when we record it, we'll be just sitting there going, I wonder what I should say. It'll just be steady.
Horrible at performing, right? Like, I hate performing. It's just not my thing. And I know that you don't like it either. So nope.
No, and I had told you I tried to do recordings for my course, and I had it all, the script, and I wrote it out, and then I was reading it like a robot. I get to, and it was like, no, I don't want to do that. And then I thought, I don't know if I could just ad lib it and be putting all that pressure on myself about it. And I go, oh wait, this is what people experience with their horses when we have to perform with them, or we have to do something new, and it's like we freeze, or we bungle through it, and I'm like,
well, your energy completely changes, and your horse is like, what gives? What's the problem? What is going on with you? And I think that's the problem that like I have when I go from groundwork to riding, is like my energy completely changes. And my horse, because I can take her, I can like hand walk her on trails, and she will be like relaxed and chill, and she'll be like connected with me. And then I get on, and then she's like nervous and skittish, and she's disconnecting, and I know it's me.
I know it really sucks, because you think I've gotten through some of this stuff in certain areas of my life, and things seem to flow in certain aspects of your life, and then you introduce yourself to a new thing, and you realize, oh, I didn't get rid of that altogether.
It's still creeping around in there.
Creeping in.
So yeah, that's definitely a priority for this year with my sessions with you, is I want to get to the place where I can be consistent for my horse and for myself, no matter what role I'm playing and where we are. And I want to stop carrying things that I just don't need to carry anymore.
And I did a session with a horse today, and it's like, oh, she was carrying things, and just giving her permission that she doesn't have to carry, especially some person's stuff, or even her old stuff, or even stuff from another horse or another place she's been. That it's interesting when you sometimes tell the horse, well, you could let go of that thing you're holding, and they kind of look like, what? I never thought of that. Really? Are you sure? And I mean, horses are so much easier. They go, oh, well, thanks for letting me know, and I hadn't really thought about that. But people are like, well, I don't think so. I won't need that later.
Well, that's how I am. I'm like, oh no, I'm pretty sure I need that. And yeah, I don't think I can let that one go. Like, that's totally how I am. Like when I started going to therapy, and I started going to therapy because you told me to.
Oh, because I was going, I don't know what to do.
And I was like, okay. And of course, I never would have gone for myself, but I'd go for my horse. How we people are so strange. And so like my first 3 months of therapy was like my therapist being like, oh, so that's not yours. Like, I feel like you're carrying something that's not yours. And I honestly couldn't tell the difference. Like, I really couldn't tell the difference of what was mine and what wasn't mine. And like, that was like really the beginning of trying to figure out, how to approach things in healthy ways, and how to manage things in healthy ways. Cause I just honestly couldn't even tell like what was mine and what wasn't, because everything felt like mine. And I'd be like, really? Because it really feels like mine. And she'd be like, yes. And and yeah, and I always tell my horse Monet that she doesn't need to carry my things, but when I'm really being honest, I'm still expecting her to. So it's
Mm.
like I'll give her the lip service while I'll be like, "Oh, sweetie, you don't have to do that," and then I'll be like, "But I'm expecting you to kind of still do that." Like I'm kind of doing both, right?
Yeah. Well, because I think it's human nature, we've talked about that thing about the different roles that we play and we can play them through our lives. And, I have to admit, the victim role is kind of fun. I mean, when you get in that,
There's a lot of things that are a lot easier
mhm,
in the victim role, right? So you have like the triangulation for like like powerless dynamic is the victim, the villain, and the rescuer,
mhm,
right? And those are your three kind of like powerless dynamics that you can play. And we all play all of them.
right.
But the goal is to not spend too much time, in those and to move into, powerful, but the victim, it like in a lot of ways it feels safe and it feels comfortable, because then you don't have to actually do the deep work and you don't
Yeah.
actually have to address the difficult things. And it's not fun, to address difficult things. Like that's not enjoyable.
No, no, definitely. And
But the problem with that is you end up living a very small life,
right,
you
right.
know.
And, when you were talking about there's comfort in it, I've played the victim role many times. And now when I do it with awareness. It's like, oh, there I go.
There it is.
There it is. How long am I going to stay there? Is that really a good thing? And in the victim role, you're always thinking, well, somebody outside of me is going to save me. Somebody outside of me is going to fix this.
Yes, you're always looking for the rescuer, right?
Yeah,
And the rescuer comes in and takes your power, right? Like, oh, you're right, you are weak, and I am going to come save you, and that's going to make me feel powerful. So I'm gonna steal your power to make me feel powerful, right?
yeah,
And and so like rescuing people feels like love sometimes, but it's really not. It's love is helping people to give them the support and the guidance that they need to help themselves,
right.
right? To like remind them that they are powerful, that they are strong, that they can do this. And I think that's one of the things that I love about your work is that that's the role that you want us to take with our horses. You don't want us to be the rescuer, you don't want us to be the villain, you don't want us to be the victim. You want us to be powerful and to model that for our horse, and then we learn to model that for each other. And I love that because you're like, when you do the energy work with the horses, you're like, oh, I found this and I'm going to take care of this for you. You don't do that.
Mm-mm.
You're like, oh, I found this, I'm going to hold space with you, and when you are ready, you can let this go and you can address this. Like it's it seems like a small difference, but it makes all the difference in the world. It's switching from that powerless dynamic to that powerful dynamic, and I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And it's really hard for people. And I see we like to switch to that role. Well, if I'm broken, if I fix somebody else, I'm going to feel better. And I can deflect that, and not really deal with it in myself that really I'm broken, but I can camouflage that by going out there and fixing everything on everybody or trying to control everything or everybody.
Control, that's
Yeah,
me.
and we've disempowered our horses
Yeah.
in that role as we've played that role. And I see this so many times that the horse is just really frozen and they're waiting for you to tell them where to move their feet, or they're waiting for everything, and they've really become, in a sense, a bit lazy. Like I don't really have to do anything because that person is going to control me. That person is going to put me where I'm supposed to be, and I don't just have to take any responsibility.
Yeah.
And the people are like, well, do you see the horse doesn't do anything, so I have to do it for him. And the weaning off of that need to control everything is so hard. And the horse has to wean off the dependency on the person too.
Yep.
And that dynamic is really disempowering for both the horse and the person.
Yes.
And I see so much conflict between the horse and the person in that relationship because of that dynamic that's happening. And do you know how, as all of us, we like to control things, to actually give up the need to control and be okay with, could I let that 1,000-pound plus animal have a little more reign, have a little more freedom? And what choices might they make out there if I do? But I'm going to be saying that what that horse is going to do is they're going to change based on their environment, and you are the environment. So if you hold a modeling of something, you're saying, I'm modeling, for example, I'm relaxed in this place and I don't need to move my feet around. I'm still inside. I'm relaxed, focused, and present. And I'm there modeling that. And the horse is going, well, I betcha if I did this, you would get out of relaxed, focused, and present. And then you would come and start controlling me. So oftentimes they do a lot of stuff and trying to get you to play the game right again. And,
Kids will do that. So Eli used to do that. So both of my kiddos are adopted, and my younger one came to us through a foster care situation. And we brought him home just a couple weeks before his 3rd birthday, and there was just a lot of really difficult life experience that he came with, and he would do that. He would try to push me off balance, and he needed to know what I would do, right? Like, he needed to know where the boundaries were. He needed to know who I was. And it was hard. Like, there was a lot of thing, but he needed to know, so I think that's interesting because I don't know, I love the pursuit of truth, right? And because it's true in any concept, right? And I love just the pursuit of healthy relationships, and it looks the same, right? It looks the same with your horses than it does with the people. Is just that powerless versus powerful dynamic is just, it's really extraordinary.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people think that powerful means that you're really aggressive or you're really forceful or something like that. And you can be far more powerful in that place of, you are present, relaxed, you know who you are. And
I'm powerful within myself.
Right,
and
right.
And that has nothing to do with how you act or how you respond. And it has everything to do with how I choose to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And and it's one of those things where it's like the goal that you're reaching for.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I would love to be able to spend more and more time, in that powerful place.
Yeah. And those
Definitely.
glimpses of it, I think, is what motivates us to find that again.
Yeah.
And
I feel like that's the pursuit of who we really are.
Yeah.
Like, I believe in God, and I believe that we were created to be powerful. And I believe that he created us to be able to navigate freedom. And and in order to navigate freedom well, you have to be powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's who we are. So I feel like as we pursue that, we're just coming closer and closer to who we are.
Yeah. And in that place of power, it means you let go of control. That's so hard because people think that I can control my power. I can control other people with power. But that's what's so fascinating, that as I do the work with horses, as I become more powerful and I step into that role, and I just emit that energy frequency of, I've got it together as much as I can in this space, and I know who I am, and it's like there's nothing else I have to do. And this is really hard to articulate to people or teach them, but everything that I'm doing with Sacred Spaces, the thing that I'm very thankful for is that I get to practice this a lot, because I've got to be essentially on stage and keeping myself together. And over the years, practice doing it for 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day, and then more and more practice. And it's like, oh, I can do this longer. I can do this outside of the arena. I can walk in my human life now.
Well, and it feels very meditative. I know that whenever I do sessions with you, it feels like a meditation session. You know, and it's just this very grounding presence, right? Like I am present and I am grounded and I am here, and it feels very meditative.
And it really is. And everything that, I have this kind of love-hate relationship with kind of traditional meditation, because I'm like, well, I could sit there for an hour and meditate and try to clear my mind of all this chatter and all that. Or I could do this other type of waking meditation, and I could practice it throughout my day. And I could be in a state of, I've got my eyes open. I'm completely and utterly present. That's what I'm focusing on when I meditate through the day and when I'm teaching my gatherings. It's like I am completely present, relaxed, and focused. And isn't that what one of the goals of meditation is to clear your mind, become stiller inside? I can still be doing a whole lot of stuff in my waking meditation. I could be riding my horse across the field at full gallop. I'm still present, relaxed, and focused.
Yeah.
And that's my goal, is like, let's, instead of using meditation, sometimes people do it to escape this world or, travel somewhere else. And it's like, we're only here for a short while. Are we really supposed to leave, or could we just be present, completely here, and enjoy this existence and take in everything about this place that we're at? And when
I
you,
think that's very profound.
well, I don't know if it's profound, but it's like,
I
I
do.
think that's what our horses are asking us to do.
Yeah.
And they're coming
But
up
I
with
feel
all
like they're
these,
inviting us. Like this is
right.
possible. Like this is so much better. Why don't you guys like hang out here?
Exactly.
What are you guys doing?
I know.
Don't
And
you know this is an option? Can
I,
we talk about, like, because I know that like sometimes this can get confused where we talk like where you talk about letting go of control. But with letting go of control and focusing on controlling yourself, boundaries are super important, right?
right.
And I think that sometimes that gets confused, where people are like, oh, like I've got to let go of control, and then all of a sudden they have no boundaries, and they think that this is what powerful looks like, and it's not. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. And I believe boundaries are so difficult. And I think especially maybe for women my age, and I hate to say that, but we didn't grow up with, at least for me, that I was really permitted to have a boundary. That's kind of how I felt. And so I'm bungling through life thinking, oh, I have to be this for everybody, and I have to just let them do whatever, and I shouldn't say no, because that's not nice. And to be able to switch to, wow, I remember the first time I put up a boundary and I said no, and I thought I was going to die. Inside, I felt like I was going to die. And I had to, I don't know. I just sat there and I'm like experiencing all the feelings of like, oh, my heart is pounding and I just felt faint, and I'm just, oh my gosh, wow, what's going to happen to me if I put up a boundary? And there was a
Rejection.
conflict. I won't say that when I put up the boundary, and this is where it's kind of confusing, is you make your statement. It's not anything more than a statement. This is what I'm doing. And then the other person goes, yeah, because they're going to go, oh, wait, you put up a boundary and you never do. So I bet you I can get through your boundary.
Yeah.
And they'll start doing things, and you have to, that's when I was feeling really like, oh no, I feel like I'm going to cave. Don't do it. Don't do it. And that was so hard. And then when I survived that first time and the conflict was over, and actually the resolution was really beautiful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I survived my very first boundary. And I always found that the boundaries with horses were easier than the boundaries with people, for me anyway. But one of the things I do with the boundaries with people with their horses, because I noticed that they'll come in and they'll do things with their horse and they go, my horse just got in my space. And I'll ask them, well, did you tell him what your space was? What was your boundary? And they go, well, well, if you didn't define your boundary, how would the horse know what your boundary was? And then the horse just got in your boundary, and whatever you thought was your boundary, and then he got in trouble and got corrected because he got in your boundary. But was that really fair if you never specified what it was?
Yeah.
You know,
well, and I know a lot of times it's easy to like put up the boundary that you would like to be there, and then when it gets challenged, you're like, oh, never mind. And I feel like in that case, like it's not like a boundary, it's let's see, what's the right word for it? It's a bluff.
Right.
You're like bluffing, like, oh yeah, the boundary's like totally there. And then when it gets like, you know, when that boundary gets like questioned, then you're like, just kidding, it's not actually a boundary.
Right. And the horse encourages.
I do that sometimes, right?
Yeah. And
like,
this is
with horses or with my kids or with my husband, right? Like it's like, oh, I just totally caved.
But when you cave, you're like, dang it, I caved again. When I do boundaries with people and their horses, for example, I will have them in their mind make an energetic boundary around themselves. Okay, you have to define in your mind what is an acceptable distance from you that you want your horse. Okay, and with that said, boundaries are fluid, so it doesn't mean that every single time you're with your horse that's what the boundary is. It can get bigger, it could get smaller, but you've got to define it. So we start there in your mind, know where your boundary is. Okay, and when the horse comes in there, you're going to know. And then we teach some easy things to show the horse to move out of your boundary, so there's no big dramatic stuff. But what I noticed is funny, because sometimes I say, okay, an arm's length might be good for your boundary. So when the horse comes into your energetic boundary that you've defined in your mind, and you put your hand up there and he comes into your boundary, he's going to hit like a wall. Your boundary is essentially a wall, and you just go, knocked into the wall. And he might try to push on your wall, but your wall doesn't push back in response to that. Your wall just gets more solid. Okay. And so what I see often with when you're talking about we change our boundaries, never mind. So they put their hand up and the horse pushes on it, and then their boundary goes back here until it's right next to him. So they kind of thought about the boundary, but the horse knew it could push that boundary.
Right.
And then
so is it okay to like use like aids? So let's say you have like a stick or whatever, you're just like, oh, whoops, no, that's where it is. Because I know like boundaries is not you trying to control somebody else. Boundaries are saying, this is where the line is, and this is what I'm going to do if this boundary is not respected. Right. Like it's not controlling anybody else, but it's just communicating where my boundary is and what I'm going to do about it.
Yeah. Right.
So like, can you use like aids like that? Let's say you're still struggling to like navigate, you know, that energy work. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely. And what I do, you again, sometimes I'll have people draw a line in the sand, so they have a visual representation too of where is the boundary. and then before we even do boundary work, I'll often have people, because horses will usually come in forward. If you're going to practice a boundary, they'll probably step into you, coming towards you. And before we even do the boundary work and establish that, I want to have a way to move my horse out of that boundary, but not be like, meh, like this, and you know, all of that. Because what does that do? It causes a brace in the horse, a big reaction, and usually
that's a total change in energy, right? That goes from a protection energy to an aggression energy. Like it's a completely different energy.
Right. And I want to keep all of that to just a neutral. Like like the wall is neutral. The wall, if you ran into a wall, the wall wouldn't yell at you. The wall wouldn't do anything other than be there, and you couldn't get through it. So what we'll do usually with the boundaries is I'll teach the horse by I like to do the one where you can back up with just placing your palm on the nose of the horse, and then you wait, and then the horse has to think about what does that mean, and you direct your energy back, and then you wait for him to back out, and you go, yeah, that's it. And we work on that a lot so that I have the ability to, if that horse is coming in, I could just bring my hand up like that. And he goes, oh yeah, that's when you put your hand on my nose and I'm supposed to softly back up. This is more, there's more to that process, but that's essentially what I'll do, is because I want everything that I do or say to the horse not to cause, like you said, that disruption in the energy where they go, what? And then we get mad.
That's what so because I also get uncomfortable with boundaries, right? Because I feel like if I put up a boundary, I'm going to be rejected. Right. And so when I put up a boundary, I get uncomfortable and I change my energy to a defensive. And so, yeah, every time I put up a boundary, I'll all of a sudden lose that neutral and I go into like a defensive energy, you know, and I think that that's, and I feel it in all my relationships, right? Like I do it with my horse, but I also do it with my kids too.
Yeah.
Right. And I do it with my husband too. And it's like, well, what is my goal with my relationships? Is my goal disconnection or is my goal connection? Right. And my goal is connection, so like learning how to have healthy boundaries and enforce those boundaries and stay in a connected, open space. Like that's what I really want to learn. Like I have the desire there and I have the awareness there, but I'm still struggling to be able to stay in that place.
Yeah. And I think one of those added to what you were just saying is what I notice about boundaries is that we're never really clear about it. If we're not good at boundaries, and I could say, at the beginning, it's like, oh, should I put that boundary in? I'm like questioning myself and
just like back and forth.
And then that horse can fill all those question marks and go, yeah, there's a way in because you have a question mark. You're not sure about yourself.
You haven't really decided yet, have you?
And so what I'm thinking about all of this stuff is that when we're still and present and focused, the next place is how clear are we? Do we have clarity in our definition? Or does our definition change all the time? And sometimes we do have boundaries, sometimes we don't, but clarity. And this is one of the things I feel like through this work, even in myself, the clarity is becoming stronger. Because I believe, first of all, I believe, and this is important with when you talked about the enforcement of the boundary, I believe that I have a mechanism to get that horse out of my boundary in a soft, gentle way. If I didn't have a skill set or some method to get my horse out without big aggression and all that, then there'd be question marks and I would be doing the offensive or the defensive posture.
Yeah.
Because I don't really believe in my ability to do this. So much of this is when I'm teaching people these boundaries and different things, it's like, it's about, we have to learn a skill set to actually accomplish this.
And I know that sometimes that can be frustrating because it's like, I just want to ride my horse.
Exactly.
Which in a lot of ways you totally can, but but that's like the other side of it is like, what gifts do you have? Like what gifts does your horse really offer you? Are they recreation or are they going to help you become the best version of yourself?
Right.
Like it's actually a pretty sacred thing.
Absolutely.
And that really has been my experience in working with you. Like we can get to these places that just feel sacred. And I just, there's just really not another word for it.
And And I'm never one to judge, you know, I know a lot of people want to ride the horses and that's all they want to do and they're satisfied there. And I never advertise sacred spaces for the reason that I think people come here if they want to, or if they feel inclined to come this way, because it's going to be different. And our focus over here in the sacred space is much different than focus in other programs or other things that you might do with your horse. And really, when you come over here, what we're looking at least in my mind, is that I'm seeing horses saying, you know what, it's time for you humans to evolve, and we're going to make it harder for you. And you're going to have to change. And when you do, we'll give you the gifts. I just see that when we do something and we change in a positive direction in ourselves, that the horses go, good job, you're on the right path.
Well, it's like you're like, you can't receive things that you're not yet ready to receive, right? Because you don't even know what it is. Like you can't recognize it if you don't know enough to be able to really sit and receive it. And I think that that's just kind of the beauty of the journey of life, right? You know, and we have people in our lives that do that for us. Um, and I mean, throughout history, horses just, I don't know, there's just always a magic that is around horses. And and there's just something just magical, and just there's a depth there.
Right.
And you know, it's all like, I'm excited to not grow up around horses. My parents are both from like LA, and they thought I'd grow out of it. And I was just obsessed. I mean, from before I can remember, it was always horses, and I always just was obsessed. And I really didn't even learn how to ride until I was an adult, you know, until after I got married. It's when I really, when I learned how to ride. And I'd been on a horse maybe like 3 or 4 times growing up, and it was like the best moments of my life. And you know, and I've had a tough go. Like it hasn't been like the dream that I had. And I feel like that I've carried so much with it, I haven't been allowed to just be free, you know, like, because I'm bringing so much to it. And you know, you and I, we did that guided meditation together, which was so profound. And you know, we got to the place where, in order to kind of get back to that joy and that freedom that I felt about horses as a little girl, I had to go through this door and give up my need for control. And I couldn't do it. We
We
just
laugh.
cracked the door open, but we didn't go through.
Yes.
And I want that. Like I feel like I'm rooting for like that 8-year-old little girl in me. And it's like she's my guide, and she's the one that is going to help me journey back to myself,
Right.
you know. And then I think about like old me, like long gray hair, and you know, like old me, and I think about her, and I think, okay, well, she's already done it, and she's already made that journey back to herself, and so I can trust her because she's already done it. You know, and drawing on the past and the future, and knowing that if eternity exists at all, like it's all connected, right? And we can draw from either direction. And I think that there's a lot of, I don't know, I think it's kind of a beautiful way of looking at things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like, you know, we were talking about how difficult it was to be a grown up and doing doing adulting. And I think that somehow we are told, or there's this idea that you have to give up the younger part of yourself if you're an adult. You know, you can no longer do that stuff. And I feel like I'm finally stepping in and maybe going backwards into looking at things and being with horses in a way that it's just fun, and it's just the seriousness is out of it, and all of this other stuff that gets put into just finding the essence of how it was when I was a child with horses. And, lots of people talk about that, but how many people can do that? And it's just related to that thing you just said about, we think we have to control things now as an adult. And I feel like, sometimes now that I'm letting go of control and just trying to live in the flow, anytime now that I feel like somebody's trying to control me or something is trying to control me, I feel rebellious like a kid, like a kid, and maybe
It's
like a horse would,
riot.
There's certain horses that go, no, I don't, you don't do that with me. I don't do control, and horses are very
Renee doesn't like to be pushed around.
Yeah.
Like, she gets very claustrophobic, and she is just like, nope, I don't like that at all. No, but she needs boundaries, right? She absolutely needs boundaries. But she doesn't like to be micromanaged.
Yeah.
And which is fair. I mean, gosh,
Absolutely.
I don't love that either. And yeah, it's definitely a journey.
Right.
A journey of understanding, and a journey of knowing, and a journey of really letting go. And that's really hard for me.
Yeah, join the whole adulting world, we're just, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think that's kind of my goal. And is getting back to year-old me and kind of being her champion, right? And letting her kind of be my guide.
Yeah.
And and I when you were talking about being more intentional about things, like, I feel like I need to, like, sit down and write it, like, write things out. I think writing for me really helps to kind of get from, like, feeling to, like, knowing. It kind of, like, bridges that gap for me. And then it helps you, to put it in a place that's more like you can apply it better, right? And I think I want to spend some time there where, okay, what does that look like for me? Okay, so I want to show up in this way, and these are my goals, and this is what I want to work towards. But, like, spend some time, like, really writing and letting, like, myself kind of process it that way, and bringing it from, like, kind of theoretical things to, like, how do I apply this? Like, I think that, like, when I feel myself getting into the victim mindset, I've started asking myself the question, okay, what are you going to do about it? Sometimes I really hate that question, and I'll ask that question to myself, and I'll just be so pissy. And I'm like, I don't want to do anything about it, or I can't do anything about it. But, like, I'll ask myself the question, what are you going to do about it? And I feel like that's kind of what I want to focus on a little bit, is, like, with myself, is, figuring out, where I want to go. And, okay, so that's what you want. So what are you going to do about it? Right. And, like, working on intentionally building a bridge, to create that in my life.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And it's all a journey. And, it's, I'm thankful for all those struggles on my journey, and I wouldn't, as hard as they were at the time, and how much frustration or hopelessness or anything else that I felt in the moment and trying to get through, I always knew there was something on the other end. Like, I just need to get through this. And sometimes it felt like it was, oh no, another thing. Oh no, another thing. And I just felt like I was crawling through the muck and mire, and I couldn't seem to see an end to it. And I just think, wow, I could have given up. I could have really given up. And there were times when I thought about really giving up. And then I'm like, no, somewhere deep inside me, I know there's something I'm supposed to do. And that would be selfish to give up. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to keep going. And the struggle is the thing that causes us to grow. And it's the thing that causes us to want to give up at the same, so it's that place where you go, okay, I don't want struggle. I don't, and people say this with their horses too. I want it to be easy. I don't want the struggle. Well, the struggle's often for greater understanding or growth or something else is the reason for that struggle. And if you sit in that struggle and you go, okay, I'm gonna feel it, all of the emotions involved in this struggle, I'm gonna feel them so I don't forget. And then when I come out the other side and I experience the opposite, it makes that much more sweet or wonderful, And then I think that, and especially when I see you, and I've told you this many times, that I feel like there's such depth in you and so much that you have to offer, and that I know you're going through the struggle, but in my looking at you from a distance, it's like, oh, good, she's got this struggle. Wait till she comes out the other end. That's gonna be amazing. And I know, and this is how I guess I work with horses too. It's like, I see your struggle and I'm gonna hold the space for you. And I have the utmost faith in you that you can find that way through. And really, if you offer anybody or another person or horse something, I think that's such a valuable gift. And I think if somebody had believed in me sometimes, I didn't have anybody that believed in me. And I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm all alone and there's nobody. If I just had one person that believed in me, it would make it better. But, I think that part of our relationships and going through life is, can we boost that other person up and not fix it for them, but just be there and say, I see you and I see your gifts and I see you going through the struggle, but I know you're going to get through it on the other end different and better. And, if I went in and said, hey, I can fix all your problems for you, one part of you would probably go, oh, right. Yes.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. I want that. And
tomorrow at noon, does that work for you?
Sure. But really, it's like when I think about my experiences and the struggles and stuff, it gives me greater insight on this other end. And not that I don't believe, I mean, I'm going to have other struggles, I'm sure, in my life. And I will look at them as opportunities for growth again. Oh, I have another struggle. And believe it or not, I have one here with putting together an online course. I'm stepping into a place that I feel very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I avoided it for many years. And it's like, I can't do that. I can't do, all these excuses. And then I'm in the midst of it and it's like, oh boy, this is so much stuff is coming up for me during this that I need to resolve. But at the same time, as I go through that in the struggle and the feelings of, well, I'm not good enough, or I'm not this, or whatever I might be experiencing through this challenge, I'm going to come out the other end at the end of it and go, God, I'm glad I did that. And, I think that people sometimes, again, they want their horse journey to be without struggle. But I'm always, when they have a difficult horse, they go, oh, good, you got a difficult horse. You're going to learn so much.
Well, and it seems
like,
to be like,
oh, I don't want that.
Yes, I know, right? Like, oh, please don't. I just please. But I think you do that struggle does guide you into that sacred space in ways that comfort cannot.
Right.
As much as I would love for that to not be the case, but
I know.
as you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I don't know. I've wanted to stop, like when our kids struggle and we are like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that it's hard. Like I kind of want to stop apologizing when it's hard. Because I feel like it sets us up to look at the struggle in ways that don't serve us. right? Be like, I see that it's hard. Like, I see that that's hard, and I see that that's heavy, and I know that you've got this. Like,
Mhm.
isn't that like, isn't that a more powerful message,
Right. Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. And then they have
And
to go into their resources
yeah,
and figure out how to do it.
and they don't have to do it alone, right? Like,
Uh-uh.
I know that when I struggle, I immediately disconnect, and I need, I want to learn how to struggle and immediately move towards connection. Oh, I'm struggling. I need to hold on to my connections, right?
Yeah.
Instead of, because I'll do this, because I do this in all my relationships. And like, if I, and like with Monet, like, if I'm struggling, I will notice that my immediate response is to disconnect from her, and that makes it so much worse.
Yes.
And but I do it with my kids, and I do it with myself, I do it with God, I do it with my husband. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
I'm gonna figure this out on my own little island over here, and it doesn't work out. It's
Yeah.
not the way to do it. It doesn't serve me, and it doesn't move me towards my goals, right? Like, it just, I immediately start working against myself when I do that.
Yeah. And, I think everything, even with the horses, people are afraid of, oh, there's the boundary. I've got to go away from the boundary, of that threshold of when the horse starts to get tense. And, yeah, when you first work, if you're working through trauma, yeah, you'd want to be very careful around the thresholds and keep the horse under threshold a lot. But sometimes we need to be pushed up to threshold so that we can grow.
And we can learn that we're going to be okay.
Right, and that we can build resiliency and we can know that we have the skill set to get through that. And, with the horses, I'm trying to teach them those skill sets for emotional resiliency. And at the same time, I'm realizing, oh, those work for me too, or those would work for
Absolutely.
people. And we do need struggle, and we do need all these other things, because I've noticed, a lot of people that don't have struggle in their life, they don't grow that much. They kind of end up being superficial and not real deep. And they don't often have a lot of empathy for others because they
Mm,
haven't gone through the struggle. So how could they even identify with any part of that?
right. They,
So,
they don't understand.
the struggle uh, in others and in yourself, that gives you the ability to empathize and say, yeah, wow, I can feel what that feels like. And I'll hold you some space. I'll hold you some space
Yeah.
over here. Know that I'm here, and I'm not gonna fix it, but I'm gonna be here,
Mm, hmm.
understanding. And it
That's
really,
beautiful.
with horses, that's what I do.
Well, I think that's the perfect way to wrap up our conversation. I think that's perfect.
This was so lovely, and
No,
um,
I love talking to you.
I do too, and I feel like it's such a lovely flow to the conversation, and we'll probably put this up on our Sacred Spaces site in case anybody wants to listen to a discussion, and we'll see how that goes through, because I think we've touched on many topics that people experience,
Yeah.
and that.
I think it's so easy to think that we're all alone in this. And it's
Mhm.
like, actually, we're really all experiencing a lot of very similar things.
Right, right, right. And we're just here for each other and getting out of that need to rescue and fix things and
Yeah.
to just be there for somebody. That's
Yeah.
it. That's the biggest gift ever.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So thank you, Nancy,
Thank
and thank
you.
you for all you've done on the Sacred Spaces Facebook group. And um,
I'm not doing great on that.
well, we're gonna give you grace because you have a lot of things, of struggles that you're dealing with now, which you're going to come out the other end of with like great insights and
Okay.
greater strength and more in your power of who you are. So,
Thank you.
all
I will
right.
watch that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Susie.
Bye.